Well, it all began one snowy December night. I was on a date with a girl at the Indianapolis Pan American ice skating rink. And as I skated not so nimbly about with my beautiful date in my arm, I realized that the legacy I was setting for myself that night was one of shame and, well, sheer clumsiness. And I thought to myself, you know what, Brandon, you can do better than that. You can give these people something to remember you for. And so as I wobbled to and fro from one end to the other, I noticed at one point a middle-aged lady, roughly 30 years old, was gaining on my tail. And I turn around and I say, "Ah!" And she goes, "Ah!" And I said, "You remember the day that Brandon Fitzsimmons turned on you and scared the pobs out of you on this ice rink. Do not forget me." And she's like, okay. And I skated off and I never saw her again. Didn't even get her name. But it made the mark. It made a mark on her. I could see it in her eyes. She would never forget me. The joke stuck, and I realized, you know what? I want to make this a habit, day in and day out. I want to find one new person every day to startle, to amuse, to wow, whether it be a friend, an acquaintance, or a complete stranger. I want someone every day of my life to remember the day they met Brandon Fitzsimmons. And since then, that's what I've done. So this one Thursday afternoon, I decided to check out the local lake scene. A couple showed up hand in hand walking along the shore. And they made their way up a dock and sat down, dipping their toes in their water and whispering sweet nothings in one another's ear. And I thought, this is my chance.
You forever remember the day that I, Brandon Fitzsimmons, gave your little girlfriend the dip of a lifetime.
The next afternoon, I found a grove of small pine trees in which I took shelter and decided I was going to wait until the perfect, portly, broad-shouldered young buck came walking up.
Woohoo! Yahoo! Yahoo! You remember the day that Brandon Fitzsimmons rode you like a bull?
And I took off into the distance. He couldn't catch me. And that's when things started gaining momentum. That's when I started gaining steam. The next day, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go for a little bit less force, a little bit less in your face. Starting to feel like, I'm starting to break some physical boundaries here. Be it boys or girls, I don't care. I'm breaking physical boundaries. So this next one's gonna be totally hands-off, non-confrontational. So I found a local park bench, and I pretended to be napping. And sure enough, a young man, probably a college student, came by with his bike, and I made sure he never forgot who I was.
You remember Brandon Fitzsimmons?
Things started getting crazy when I started finding out that some of my buddies, I guess inspired by my antics, decided they were going to start making a name for themselves. Only the catch was they weren't making a name for themselves. They were making a name for me through themselves. If that makes sense. For instance, my buddy Brent, he one day was just walking with his backpack down the side of the street, and apparently he had stored some boxing gloves. And he sees a random guy come walking by and just starts like wailing on the guy.
That's right! You remember the day Brandon Fitzsimmons pwned you like a noob.
Now, would I have done that? I don't know. Brent's got a lot of testosterone, a lot of adrenaline.
What are you doing?
So eventually, this phenomenon, it grew so much so that I was at a restaurant one day with a couple of my buddies, and I was eating a loaf of bread before the big meal came out. As I brought it up to my face, some cheeky little bugger sticks his mug in and just takes a big old chomp right out of my bread. Right as I was inches away from my face, and he looks at me and he says, "You remember the day that Brandon Fitzsimmons bit a chunk off your bread while I was inches away from your face. And I looked at him and I said, fool, do you know who I am? I am the Brandon Fitzsimmons. I started this trash. No, you remember the day that you tried to make the Brandon Fitzsimmons remember Brandon Fitzsimmons. So for those of you watching this, I have one last word. Never forget the day you heard Brandon Fitzsimmons' story.